A black woman steps in to help a millionaire whose car had suddenly broken down, and when his eyes catch sight of the ring on her finger, he freezes, absolutely stunned. No one had seen her. Nobody even remembered her name. But in that blazing, relentless afternoon heat, with the sun hammering down like fire onto the silent, empty road, she became something completely unexpected, the only hope for a man who appeared to have it all. There it was, a sleek luxury vehicle stalled in the middle of nowhere, smoke curling up from the engine like a warning. And inside, a man who usually lived on top of the world, now suddenly powerless. Thomas Weber, the sharp, calculated executive who ran boardrooms like battlefields, found himself completely lost, unsure of how to even ask for help. Frustrated beyond words, Thomas slammed his hand on the steering wheel of his Maserati. His watch, platinum, expensive, custom, read 11:43. In just 17 minutes, he was expected to stand in front of the most influential investors in the country. He was supposed to pitch the very project that could make or break the future of his empire. Panic started to rise. His silk shirt clung to his back, drenched with sweat. He flung open the hood of the car, only to be swallowed by a thick burst of steam. He stumbled back with a curse, tugging at his tie. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. The $3,000 designer suit he wore wasn't made for moments like this, and neither was he. It was ironic, painfully so. A man who commanded respect, wealth, and power, reduced to helplessness by an overheating engine he couldn't even name. Just when the silence felt like it would choke him, an unexpected sound. The low rumble of an aging engine. A worn-out pickup truck, battered by years of sun and weather, crept to a stop just a short distance away. Thomas squinted in the light, watching as someone climbed out. A woman. Grease-stained jeans. A flannel shirt with the sleeves confidently rolled up. Her curly hair was tied up in a no-nonsense bun, and her skin, rich, dark, shimmered in the sunlight. "You need help?" she asked plainly, striding toward him with calm, grounded steps. There was a kind of certainty in her walk that Thomas didn't recognize, and definitely didn't have in that moment. "I've got an extremely important meeting in less than 15 minutes, he snapped, barely masking his anxiety. "My assistant was supposed to send a mechanic, but there's no damn service out here." She didn't flinch. Not at his tone. Not at his suit. Not at the clearly expensive car. She didn't ask permission, didn't hesitate. She just walked straight to the smoking engine and leaned in to inspect it, as though the Maserati was just another job. "It's your cooling system," she said with calm authority. "I can patch it, not permanently, but enough to get you to the city. You'll have a couple hours before it acts up again." Thomas blinked, not quite sure how to process the confidence she exuded. He glanced at her, top to bottom, as if searching for something to validate what she said. "Are you sure?" "I'm a mechanic," she said, sharp and steady. "Got my own shop 10 miles from here." Without waiting for him to agree, she returned to her truck and pulled out a toolbox. Every movement was precise, no wasted energy. She worked with a quiet efficiency, like this was just another Tuesday. Her hands, small but firm, moved over the engine with near-surgical accuracy. "Another 5 minutes and your engine would have been toast," she said, still focused, adjusting something Thomas couldn't even name. These luxury models? High performance but surprisingly fragile, kinda like their owners. He heard the jab, but he was too wrapped up in his own crisis to get defensive. He was about to make a snide remark when he stopped himself. "How do you know so much about cars like this, working in—" He trailed off, hearing his own bias too late. "In a forgotten little town," she finished the sentence for him, glancing over her shoulder. "I read. I study. I take my work seriously. Greatness isn't only reserved for skyscrapers and boardrooms, Mr. Weber." He stiffened slightly. "You know my name?" "You're in the business section of the newspaper a lot," she said with a shrug, gently closing the hood. "There. That should get you into town." Relief flooded through him. "I owe you," Thomas said, reaching into his wallet and pulling out a wad of bills. "Please take this." But when she extended her hand to take the money, he saw it. That ring. Antique. Silver. a tiny sapphire embedded delicately in the center. It didn't fit the image of someone with grease under their fingernails, and yet it made perfect sense. His heart dropped into his stomach. He knew that ring. Time seemed to pause. A memory he hadn't touched in decades surged to the surface. A little girl with wide, sparkling eyes, a secret promise whispered under the shade of a giant tree, and a farewell gift, the very last thing his mother had given him before she passed away. "Where did you get that ring?" His voice cracked despite himself. She instinctively curled her fingers, shielding the stone. "It was my mother's," she said cautiously, her tone casual, but her eyes suddenly wary. "Why do you ask?" She had no idea. No clue that 20 years ago, that same ring had slipped onto her young fingers, placed there by a boy who swore he'd come back for her. A boy who now stood in front of her. A man who had broken a childhood vow. And somehow, in a twist no one could script, fate had brought them face to face again. If stories of lost promises, chance encounters, and haunting reunions speak to you, stick around. Because this isn't just about a ring, it's about a destiny that refused to be forgotten. Maya narrowed her eyes when she noticed how long Thomas had been staring at the ring. Wordlessly, she pocketed the money and turned to leave. "If it breaks down again, my shop's just 10 miles out. First right after the Aurora City sign," she said coolly, walking back to her truck. Thomas stood frozen.
Torn.
The meeting of his life, or the mystery unraveling right in front of him. "That ring," he started again. But her engine had already roared to life. "Your meeting, Mr. Weber," Maya called out flatly. "Your investors are waiting." As the Maserati sped away into the distance, Maya stood there, unmoving. She touched the ring with her thumb, a familiar, unconscious gesture. "He didn't recognize me," she whispered. "He really didn't see me back then and still doesn't now." Back at Hope Mechanical, Maya's hands were already deep in another engine. But her mind? Still racing. Maya channeled all her frustration into each sharp, focused movement. Every twist of the wrench, every bolt tightened a little too hard. She wasn't just fixing an engine, she was working through 20 years of disappointment. "You're about to ruin that carburetor," came a deep, steady voice behind her. Her uncle, Xavier. He approached with quiet concern, his tall frame casting a shadow across the garage floor. His hair had grayed at the temples, a subtle reminder of the years that had passed, of the weight he'd carried beside her. He was the only one who knew every corner of her story, all the pain, the waiting, the truth. "He showed up," Maya muttered, wiping oil from her hands with a rag, her tone flat. "Uncle X, just like that. Like some cruel little joke from the universe." Xavier's eyes darkened. He stood still, his face unreadable. "Thomas Weber?" "The boy who promised to come back," Maya corrected coldly. "The man who forgot." She stared blankly at her own reflection in the shop window. "He looked right at me, Uncle. Right into my eyes. And all he saw was some nameless, grease-stained mechanic. He recognized the ring, but not the girl who's kept it close to her heart every day for the past 20 years. That night, alone in her modest room above the workshop, Maya pulled a wooden box from beneath her bed. The hinges creaked slightly as she opened it. Inside were neatly folded newspaper clippings, yellowed with age. She'd collected them over the years, each headline following the rise of Thomas Weber. There he was, in articles celebrating tech innovation, corporate charity, and, most recently, a glossy feature about his engagement to Elise Harrington, heiress to a fashion empire, polished and perfect. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of a photo before she whispered bitterly to the empty room, "Tomorrow, he won't even remember the ring, let alone me." But Maya was wrong. The very next morning, a nondescript sedan rolled up quietly in front of Hope Mechanical. No flashy Maserati. No driver. Just Thomas, stepping out without his usual luxury attire, as if trying to become invisible. "We're open," Maya called, not bothering to hide the chill in her voice. "I'm not here for service," he replied softly, walking forward. "I came to return this." He opened his hand. There, resting in his palm, was a small wooden brooch, a bird, wings stretched mid-flight. Maya's breath caught. That brooch, her first carving. The gift she had made for him the day they said goodbye, long ago. Her voice barely escaped. Open Heart Orphanage. Orion's section. Thomas nodded slowly. You were the one who taught me how to carve. When everyone else teased me for being soft, you showed me it was okay to create. Her heart pounded in her chest. You said you'd come back, Maya whispered, the words slipping past her guard. I tried, Thomas said, eyes clouding over. I searched for years, but my father, he swallowed hard. He had other plans. He erased you. From the shadows of the garage, Xavier stepped forward. His arms were crossed, a cloth still in one hand. He studied Thomas like a puzzle he didn't trust. So the golden boy returns, Xavier said with a low voice. 2 decades late. Thomas met his stare without flinching. I deserve your suspicion. But I came to explain and to ask for something, anything. Maya's expression stayed guarded, though her voice cracked slightly. Xavier took me in after the orphanage. He's the reason I survived. He taught me everything I know, gave me a place when the world turned its back on me. That was supposed to be my promise to keep, Thomas said, full of remorse. And I failed. Why now? Maya demanded. Why show up after all this time, after everything's already happened? Thomas looked down, collecting himself before he spoke. In 3 weeks, he said slowly, I'll stand in front of the world and announce my engagement to a woman I don't love. I'll take over a company I secretly resent. I'll become the man my father molded me to be, not the one I chose. He looked up at Maya, raw and vulnerable. And then I saw you. I saw the ring, and something inside me woke up. His phone buzzed on the workbench nearby. Elise. 6th call in a row. She's determined, Maya noted coldly.